Welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Establishment, and this is session 47. There's about 6 things that we're going to get done in this lesson, and so let me just give them to you right off the bat. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little exercise right here in the beginning on effectual working. This is really important, and so I want you to be able to have this kind of nailed down in your thinking. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to survey verse 20 and wrap it up. Third thing we're going to do is in verse 20 we're going to define what it means when it says that the creature was made subject to vanity. I want you to know exactly what that's talking about. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to see something else that the creature was made subject to in that verse. We're going to talk about the issue of God's mercy. And lastly, we're going to talk about the creature's hope. And that will wrap up what we're going to do in verse 20 and get us set up for verse 21. So right here at the start of the lesson, what I'd like for us to do is to read the main body of this section of Scripture that we're involved in. So here it is on the PowerPoint in verse 20. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now, and not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. Now, as we look through this passage, we're going to come back and focus on verse 20. And so let me just bring it up all by itself. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him was subjected the same in hope. Now I gave you some questions to ponder as you looked at this passage the last time we met. You've had a week to be able to do that. But before we do that, instead of giving you a note taker, what I've done this time is I included your note takers sort of within the notes themselves. So using verse 19 as an example, there's something I want you to do with verse 20, but let me use 19 to just show you. Well, I don't guess I have 19 on the, let me just back this up. I guess I don't have 19 in the PowerPoint. And I started to write it on the board, and I thought, no, it's in the PowerPoint, I won't do that. So if you'll just look in your Bible, look at Romans chapter 8 and verse 19. It's in your notes, isn't it? Okay. Here's what I want. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. Now, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to give you this as an example. I want you to break verse 20 down. We're going to do it with 19. We're going to break this verse down into what we consider to be its main parts. So that, now look, I don't want you to sum the whole verse up in a single phrase. That's not what I'm asking you to do. What I'm asking you to do is look at the component parts of the verse and say to yourself, how would I divide this verse up? So I want us all to do this one together, and then I'm going to turn you loose with verse 20 because I need you to be able to look at this in the way that you will go home and look at verses so they can have their effect on you they're supposed to have. Everybody with me? This is not an exercise in futility. This is how effectual working works. Now, you may already be doing something that's plenty. I'm not implying that you're not. But I just want to make sure we're not leaving anybody behind on this thing. So if you were going to put this in your words and break this down into its component parts, somebody give me a suggestion here. What would be the first component part of verse 19? All right, Karen says earnest expectation. So would it be fair to say that the creature has an earnest Expectation. Can I just do it that way? All right. There's a component. Everybody, does everybody see that? Okay. What's another component part? All right. The next thing that you're told is that the creature is waiting. And I'm glad you didn't go any further than that, because the temptation would be to lump in what it's waiting for. But it's not given to you that way. It's really given to you in parts. What's the next thing we'd be looking at here?
Waiting for the Son of God.
All right. Okay. There's a couple of ways we could go here. There's no wrong way. Randy said the creature is waiting for the sons of God. And that's true, but if you do it that way, you got one more component part. What would that be? Yeah. And that's, what about those sons of God? So then you have the creature waiting for the manifestation. And so that means you'd have to know what that is, right? Okay. Now, does everybody kind of see how that works? So what I want you to do is look at verse 20. There's lines right there in your notes. Now, I've given you 7 of them, lines. It doesn't mean there's 7 parts. I just gave you 7 lines, that's all. It could be less. You may see more than that. I'm not really concerned about that. And I'm really not concerned with you putting down the same answers that I've got. But we are going to go through my answers with this. But what I want you to do is just read that verse carefully on your own and try to break that into parts. While you're doing that, I want to talk to the folks that are watching this on the video or listening on the MP3. If you're sitting at home and watching this right now on the video, then what I would encourage you to do is this exercise right now. Look at verse 20, get you a piece of paper, or if you have the notes printed out, those blanks will be right there in your notes. Just write that down. What is it you see? Just break that up into parts. Don't worry about it. There's no wrong answer here. What you see is what you see, and that's fine. If you're listening to this on audio, and I know that some of you are doing this while you're doing other things and you're not able to stop and write it down, let me encourage you later on to get your Bible and a piece of paper and start looking at verses like this one here in verse 20 and just break that verse down into its parts. Best you can. And if you know verse 20, you know, we've been talking about it. The creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him was subjected the same in hope. Even as you're driving, just start thinking about that. What are those parts? I just need you to start turning your mind in that direction. Now, this assembly is doing that here, and that's an advantage because we're not only going to get to do it together, but we're going to talk about it together. Now, you're not here, so we're going to do the next best thing, and that is for you to not just hear what we're doing, but for you to actually participate in this along with us. You may have to do it later, and you may do it on your own, but it is important that you don't shortcut this process. Okay. All right, I see some of you are still writing, and some of you are done. That's okay. This is the kind of thing, the reason we're doing this now is because this is the kind of thing that you're going to have to acclimate yourself to doing, at least mentally. Yeah, we're writing it down now. That's not a bad way to go. But when you're dealing with these verses during the week, I don't care when it is, you sit down in that chair and you pick up your Bible and you're looking at this, at least mentally, I'm giving you a process to go through that will allow you. We're not just breaking a verse down for the sake of breaking it down, but we are divided into parts because each one of these parts is supposed to have an impact on us. And that way you're not just being overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff that looks like a single verse, and I'm not really impacted by that at all. Okay. Has everybody kind of got themselves underway? We can at least start, right? Okay. So with verse 20, looking at that, somebody tell me Linda, let's start with, I'm just picking on you because you're Vociferous. What's the first thing on your list that you have that you separated out of verse 20?
That the creature he was made subject.
All right, that he was made subject. And if you were going to say that in your own, now that's exactly right. And that's right out of the verse. If you were going to say that in your own words, how would you say that?
That he was forcefully put under somebody else's control.
Okay, that he was forced into a submissive, some kind of submissive position. Okay, so I'm not trying to get you away from the Bible words. Those are the words that do effectually work in you. I'm just wanting to make sure that you've got the concept in your mind of what's going on. Does somebody else have a different first? Did everybody do the made subject thing? Okay. Did any of you include vanity with that? Creatures made subject to vanity? Okay, that was your second thing. Okay. That's not a bad thing at all. Now, somebody tell me, when the creature's made subject to vanity, sum that up for me in your own words.
Made useless.
Randy says made useless. That's good. I like that. Anybody else? Idleness? Okay, Nancy, that's good. Idleness? Because he's certainly not doing anything, is he? All right? Okay. Now, that may be an area that some of you are thinking, well, it's using the word vanity. That's an odd way to say this. What is really going on with that? That's actually one of the things we're going to cover today. We're going to define that word vanity. There's actually two components to that you need to understand, and you'll see it when we go through that. All right, what's the next thing that you saw? So if we were going to do this, so we saw that the creature, well, I'll put something up on the PowerPoint in a minute. Creature was made subject to vanity, whether you have that in one part or two parts. What's next? All right. There was something that was done unwillingly. But let me ask you a question. The fact that he was made subject, didn't that already imply that he was forced?
Yes.
Because if he was forced, doesn't that, as I'm saying, imply that he wasn't doing this on his own? So why repeat that idea by setting it off with a comma and saying, not willingly? You already kind of came to that conclusion. Does anybody have an idea? Why is it saying it to you that way? The Bible's not being redundant here. The Bible's not saying, it'd be like Bob saying, well, Norma forced me to come to church. I really didn't want to, but she threatened me. So here I am. And then he goes, and I'm here against my will. Well, we already got that part, right? So that not willingly is not being repetitive about being made subject. There's some, huh?
Show that he does have a will.
Well, it does show that he has a will. It does. But there's something more than that. There's a double issue with regard to being made subject to vanity.
He's not going to like it.
All right, he's not going to like it. That's a true statement. But what is it he's not going to like? Huh?
The reason he was made subject.
Whose control he's under.
Anybody else? Teresa?
It makes me think of, I'm always telling Tommy, you're going to go to heaven. You may do it kicking and screaming and fighting, but you're going, because he is subject. The creature is subject. But he may be kicking and screaming and fighting. No.
Okay, so you're saying the creature doesn't want to be made, what was the word you used, Randy? Useless, or Dan said, Creature doesn't want to be made. Well, that's true. That'd be true. Empty? That's true.
Wouldn't it be out of obedience?
See, there's an issue here we need to really talk about, isn't it? And we're going to do that today. That's why I'm giving you a hint about it. There's two issues at work here. One of those things is made the creature to do, but there's something else that the creature doesn't want to do. We'll talk about that dual component. But see, this is part, here's why I'm taking you through this. This is part of what you will come to mentally when you begin to break this verse up. Are you with me? When you begin to look at these points and you would say to yourself, so what does it mean when it's, I know what made subject is, but what is vanity? Well, we've gotten a couple of answers for that. Then you say, well, okay, so if he's made subject to vanity, then why in the world now is he coming along and saying, not willingly? Because the Bible doesn't do it the way we talk. We do repeat ourselves. Bible's not interested in that. Every word's in there with a meaning. So that's what, okay, now what? Let's leave that now and continue on. I don't take too long with that. What's the next section that you see? But what did you say, Karen? By reason of him. Somebody put that in your own words. Okay, Karen says God made him do it. That's not a wrong answer. God did make him do it. But, huh?
He didn't stop it either.
He didn't stop it. That's right. Yeah.
That he was made subject for a reason.
Yeah, okay, he's made subject for a reason. In other words, if God's the one that made him subject to vanity, God had a reason in doing that, right? Right. And today we're going to talk about that reason. Because when we get through with this verse today, you're going to have a complete and full understanding of exactly what's going on with all this terminology. As you might imagine, there's a whole lot packed in this one little verse right here. All right? So now, by reason of him, anybody, what's the next component you've got broken out of this? What, Nancy?
Who had subjected, so to say.
Okay, so who did? God did that. Yeah. Because if you're not careful, when you first read this verse, you know what you're thinking? This is something the adversary did to him. But no, this is something God did. But not only was he made subject to vanity for a reason, but he was also, notice that word, subjected. We're right back to that. But this time, what is the creature subjected to? Ah! So if he made him subject to vanity, he's also going to make him subject to a hope. Now, but there's some things we'll talk about with that. All right, now I think you've done pretty well with that. Did anybody find this process just excruciating? I mean, I know it conjured up days of your old school work days, and that may have, made your eyes flutter a little bit. But is this, I'm trying to show you, this isn't anything you can't do. Does anybody have a question about this process that we're doing? Don't you see this is really a pretty basic process? You know what the hardest part is? The hardest part is not breaking it up into its parts. It's when you break it up into its parts that you understand what those words are talking about. You see being made subject to vanity. Teresa?
Well, it also makes it, we are subject to hope, our blessed hope. But it makes you have the realization that the creature is a living, physical being that is going through the same suffering.
Exactly.
As the hope.
And you know what? That's exactly the way Paul's laying this out. He's going to tell you about this creature, and then in Romans 8 he's going to come along and he's going to talk about your hope. And you're supposed to make the same connection that Teresa just made. The things that are going on with the creature are the kind of things that are really going to be going on with me. And the creature, the thing that's getting him through it is he has a hope. And the thing that's going to get you through it is you have a hope. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I really like the idea that you emphasize when you read all of this, you get reinforced for you the idea this is a living creature. You're thinking, your thinking is starting to change about this creature. Okay, now, having done that, I have one more question for you, and I think I've got it on the PowerPoint. No. I'll just ask it to you, and I thought I put this on the PowerPoint. It's partly out of order. As you look at verse 20, you tell me, what do you think the main focus of verse 20 is? What do you consider to be the single most important idea about verse 20? Now I am asking you, not just to sum up the whole verse. I don't want just a sentence that sums up the whole verse. I want you to pinpoint for me what would be the single most important idea about that. Now, Teresa wasn't saying that, but let me just say, she could say at this point, well, to me, the most important thing communicated here is that the creature is really a living creature. Now, okay, so what do you see as the single most, and I just gave that as an example. I could give you 5 others.
God gave us hope.
Okay, God gave us hope. All right, what do you see? Hope? Hope for you is the single most important idea here.
Patient endurance.
All right, patient endurance. She's seeing the creature having to wait, and so she's thinking about that. Anybody see anything different?
That the creature's not functioning because he's still under control of somebody else.
Still under control of somebody else? Okay.
We're not suffering by ourselves.
Okay, we're not suffering by ourselves. That's right. Okay. Now, it really, it wasn't really. All I'm trying to get you to do is think about that, because when you get through reading a verse, I need you to look at that verse and I need you to say, what am I looking at here? What is the single idea that I'm looking at? And I'm not nearly as wanting you to see the same thing I see, because I'll tell you why. I can't teach 100% of everything that's in every verse. So you're going to go home and break a verse apart and then put it back together and say, what am I looking at here? And you may say, wow! You'll get this epiphany. The light will come on and you'll go, wow! And then you come the next Sunday and you go, hey, Brother Mike, let me show you what I saw. And I'm going to go, great! Because that's what effectual working is. When the light comes on for you. Are you with me there? Okay. Now, I broke this up into 5 parts. How many of you had 5 parts? Teresa did, Nancy did, and Randall did. Okay, 3 of you got it right. No, I'm kidding. Well, you had more than 5 parts, didn't you? 7. You had 7 parts. And I see...
7 lines.
What? Okay, there were 7 lines, yes. Yes, there were. Okay. What I did, I just did this for the sake of simplicity. I broke it up into 5 basic parts for the sake of our discussion today. And so that's really what I want to do with this. And so here they are. First one is, the creature was forced to submit to vanity. Now you see how I kind of put that in words that, if I'm having to put it in my own words, it means I'm going to have to understand the concept here. So to me, when I looked at that, now Linda broke vanity off of that. That's not a wrong thing at all. If you did that, that's perfectly fine. Everybody understand that? Okay. So the creature is forced to submit to vanity. Second thing is, the submission was against its will. See, again, I'm just putting it in my own words here. I'm using words out of the text, but I'm not just quoting the text. Here's the next one. There was a reason the creature was made subject to vanity. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build a storyline through this verse where each thing builds on the previous information. And then the next one is, and the creature has a hope of deliverance from vanity's dominion. Now, all of that's true. Now, you notice what...
Vanity, either you is or you ain't.
What? I'm sorry, say it again, Bob.
You submit to vanity. Either you is or you ain't.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. When we define vanity, then you'll look at it and you'll see why the creature did not want to do that. Now, that's what you're saying, I think. Now, you notice what I did here? For the sake of my storyline, I actually took something at the very end, which is hope, and I put it next to last in how I'm seeing this verse. So what's the last thing I wrote? The one who made the creature submit to vanity is the one who has given the creature the hope of a future deliverance from it, God. To me, why are y'all smiling at that? Oh, that did not look like a reading smile to me. Does that run pretty close to what y'all have? I know that I got those last two in a different order than you would have probably ordered it. But what I was doing is I was kind of coming to a conclusion at the end of that, where I took all of that previous stuff and wrapped it up. Because what I'm looking at, to me, doesn't need to be that way for you. Not your tutor and governor, right? There's a main storyline in this verse about God doing this and not the adversary. Now, true, I have the advantage of studying out the verses on through the chapter, so I have that coloring my thinking about it a little bit. But all of those answers you've given me are perfectly right and just as accurate as that. I just want to make sure you get that. I'm just trying to show you the way I worked through this verse, especially in the beginning. Is it possible to take my first one and then break that up into parts? Absolutely. And that's kind of the way I approach it always. I get a basic deal. I didn't tell you to do that, but that's just me. I get kind of a basic breakdown, then I take each part, and then I break that down, and then I look at words, and then I look at word choices, and all that kind of business. And then when I stand up on Sunday and I just give it to you, and I've heard some of you come up and say, I've read that verse 3 or 4 times before, and I didn't get what you got out of it, but as soon as you said it, I saw it. Well, the only reason is because you just didn't go through that process. If you'd gone through that process, you'd be reading that verse then going, oh, you know what? I never saw that before, but I see that now. That's all I'm doing, is trying to show you. Now, let's see. There was the questions. I don't think I have them up here. Yes, I do. In addition to doing it this way, there's some questions you ought to always be asking yourself. And here are those questions. Why is my Father telling me about this, or why do I need to know about it? Let's give this a shot. Somebody tell me, why do you need to know the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope? Why do you need to know that? Do you need to know that?
Yes.
Okay, Gloria?
You need to know it was from God and not from the adversary.
Okay, you need to know that it was from God, not the adversary. Would that make a difference with you? Yeah, it makes a big difference. All right. Here's the next question. What is he trying to get done in me by telling me the way he has? In other words, he didn't just tell you. Is God just giving us a bunch of information so we become these Bible encyclopedias? So when we get up to heaven, if he ever has a question, he goes, what was over in Romans 8:20? And we go, oh, and we can just spout it off. Is that what that's all about? This is actually given to you to establish you in your sonship, right? So you have to say to yourself, what's he trying to get done in me? Now this is a real general answer, but what is it? What is he trying to get done in you?
Change your thinking.
All right, he's trying to change the way, line up your thinking with his thinking, right? Tell me that's not a news flash, right? Okay, here's the next one. Ask yourself this question all the time. Is this something I would have known on my own, or is there no way I would have ever known this unless he told me about it? Now, in verse 20, which is it? You wouldn't have known about it unless he told you. You know why? Because he's talking about things you can't observe with your physical eyes. And no man could ever just write about it. All right? And here's the last one. How does this impact my thinking about, and I gave you in your notes a list of things to fill in the blank. First of all, how does that impact your thinking about the creature? Well, to give you an example, Teresa said that a while ago. It makes me think that it's a living thing. You know, it's a reminder that it's a living organism. That's not new to you, but you know that's one. But you could fill that blank in with the creature. How about if we fill that blank in with my Father's business? How does telling you about verse 20 impact your thinking about your Father's business? Give me an answer for that. Knowing that the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope, what does that tell you about your Father's business?
That he has a reason for doing it, but we don't know what that is.
Okay, all right, he has a reason for doing that. Now put it together with verse 19. The creature has an earnest expectation, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. Verse 20 tells you the problem. He was made subject to vanity, but he's also been made subject to a hope. Now, yeah, you know what? Now you're beginning to see what you're going to be involved in as part of your Father's business. In other words, as you see the creature being made subject to vanity, don't you start getting the idea he's not going to stay in that condition forever. But because you already know the creature's waiting for us, then maybe us is going to be the ones to fix that problem, right? And there's one more thing. How does this impact my thinking about my part in my Father's business? If I was looking at this, I would be saying it like this. How does this impact my thinking about my Father's business? His business is not going to be carried out until this creature gets fixed. How does that impact my thinking about my part in the business? He's depending on me to do it. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, and I've thought about it a lot, but I could just say it like that. But I don't think that's so foreign to you that you don't get that. I think you're thinking the same kinds of things. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to take those 5 issues, and I want us that I put up there, and I want not these questions, but that 5-fold breakdown of that verse, and we're going to use that to survey verse 20 and get ourselves through it. So let me just ask you a couple of questions right at the outset. Who made the creature subject to vanity? Is there anybody that looks at verse 20 and doesn't understand that? Actually, let me back this up to verse 20 so we can just take a look at it. Is there anybody that looks at verse 20 and doesn't understand that it was God that made the creature subject to vanity? Can you see that in the verse? What part am I looking at that tells me that?
By reason of him, who was held subject to the same in hope.
Okay, and you know it's not the adversary because the adversary would never do what? He'd never give the creature hope. Right. So now you know that, all right? So the next thing we need to do is we need to define vanity. What is it he is made subject to? Because is it possible for you to be looking at a verse on your own and you come to a verse like this and you go, now exactly what does he mean by vanity? It's possible for you to ask that question, and you'd want to know that you're looking at the right thing. So, what we got left here? Okay. So here's what you have. Vanity. And let me get back over to where I was now. And I should have had these. I guess I don't. In your last lesson, I thought I had on the PowerPoint, here's how I gave you a definition of vanity. And here it is. The quality of being worthless or futile. If somebody's looking at that in the notes, give me that next part. Worthless, futile, what? Huh? Oh, that's too long. You see it. What's next?
Fruitless endeavor.
Okay, a fruitless endeavor. Okay. All right, next one is untruth. Then,
Vain pursuit,
all right,
emptiness.
all of these definitions will work together to define what is going on with vanity in this case.
Useless.
Yeah, useless. That's what you said a while ago. Useless. The creature was made to where. Now, am I saying by saying by saying vanity, is the Bible saying the creature itself is worthless? It's saying because it's been made subject to vanity, it can no longer do what it was supposed to do. And in that sense, it is worthless. It's not able to do what it was supposed to do. The next thing, futile. In other words, no matter how hard you try, is the creature going to be able to rev it up and get it going? No, it's not something that can be solved by a pep talk to the creature.
Kind of helpless.
Yeah, Bud?
I know that the question I have about this, we keep bringing this up. Where in Scripture could we find where there was a time when he was being used in the right way?
That's a great question. We're going to answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to say it for the folks that are listening. You're wanting to know, where in Scripture do we find a place when he was being utilized the way he was meant to? And the answer, we'll answer that question in the session. If I get over there, I'll start talking about it and I'll get myself out of whack. So it's a great question, and you should be wondering that. That's a good way. Fruitless, it's not going to be producing what it was supposed to produce. Untruth, that's a little harder, but really, there is an untruth element to this. And you'll see, not from what God is doing, but you'll see, vain pursuit, yeah, if you're trying to utilize the creature for what he was supposed to originally do, never get done. Emptiness, that is a right way to look at it. I say it like this, the creature's been emptied out. It's like he's just there. Now I also say it like this, he's in a coma, laying in the bed with the IV drip. He can hear, but he can't respond physically. Inside, it's almost like, can you imagine a guy in a coma and the doctor going, you know, we just don't see any signs at all, I think we'll pull the plug. What's the guy thinking in his own mind? Stop! Don't pull the plug! I'm in here! I can hear you. Well, the creature, no one's fixed to pull the plug on the creature. But he is in that coma. And that central nervous system that is right now manned by Satan's angels is not able to produce. The creature's been, it's like his spinal cord got severed from the rest of him, and that it's not able to do anything with the creature. And that begins to open up a conversation that we need to have that answers Bud's question and actually leads us up to that. So before we do that, let's go to this made subject to vanity thing. The first part of what it means to be made subject to vanity, and we've used this whole thing to kind of describe that, and that is the creature no longer has the capacity to fully function. That's why when you look up at night, you don't see anything that resembles a living creature. You won't. The physical part of this creature will not indicate life right now because he has been made subject to vanity. But there's a second part to being made subject to vanity. And you know this answer, but you have to think about this. Because when Paul's telling you things, he's expecting that you're thinking about this thing the way he's giving you this information. Let's do this. Why would God make the creature unable to properly function? Why would he do that?
So he can't be used. He can't be overcome, made to do something.
Okay, so the creature can't be used by whom? By Satan. And when would the creature be used by Satan?
When Satan had control.
All right, and when did Satan get control of the creature? Not asking for a date. I'm saying, what event took place that gave Satan control of the creature? The rebellion, where the angels joined him, right? But Satan didn't just search out any old angel to join the rebellion. Who is he after? He's after the principalities and the powers and the thrones and the mights and the dominions. Now let's go to Bud's question. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. When He does that, third heaven's already in place, right? So what heaven is being created? The second heaven. And what does He place in that second heaven? I'm sorry? What did you say, Bertha? So, the sun, the moon, and the stars? All right. So that you do. You have all these galaxies that are all through there. And then when you come to us, you've got the sun, the moon, and all the stars that are all throughout there. But what day does God create the sun, the moon, and the stars? According to Genesis. Look back in Genesis 1. Now, I don't have this on the PowerPoint because I was just going to mention it to you. But I just to refresh your memory and to look at that, you can see the things that are happening day by day. Look in verse 14. Actually, verse 13. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Now that's the end of that. Verse 14. And God said, this is verse 14. Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, seasons, for days, and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And He made the stars also. What's the greater light that rules the day? What's the lesser light that rules the night? The moon. By the way, it's interesting that God uses the word rule. There's something sitting in that expression. But let's don't get sidetracked here because I'm running out. God made two great lights. He made the stars also, verse 17. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, divide the light from the darkness. And God saw it was good. And the evening and the morning were the... So the physical aspect of the creature gets formed on the fourth day. Yes? I mean, there it is. Now here's my question. When did God, by the way, when does the firmament get made in which the creature is going to be placed? The firmament of heaven. Look back in Genesis 1, verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. It was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the... So God creates this firmament. By the way, the firmament, the creature, are not the same thing. Where did God place the sun, the moon, and the stars? Look back. Verse 17. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven. If they were the same thing, guess what? They'd have been created on day 2. Yeah? Because that's when He created the firmament. So He creates this firmament, and He calls it heaven, the whole thing, and then that's on day... So day 2... is when this happens. Now, before you have a heaven, you can't have a government in it, can you? There is no government in that heaven prior to it being a heaven, is there? So you have to ask yourself the question, when did God put angels in positions? Now let's add the thrones. When did God put angels in positions of authority throughout the heavens? He creates the firmament on day 2. All He's talking about here is the material creation. He's not talking to you in Genesis 1 about the invisible things that you can't see. He's talking about the things that He materially did. By the way, were the angels already present at day 2? Yep. They're already present. So when do they get to sit on these thrones? The very earliest would be when? Could God create the thrones before He creates the sun, the moon, and the stars? Couldn't He? Now, even if you say, I don't think He did, it won't matter. That's going to be a moot point. You'll see. Now, I got to finish this up before we take our break. Let us suppose, for the sake of just looking at it, that on day 2, God creates the heaven, and He says to His angels, you know what? I'm going to put a government out here in this heaven, and I'm going to appoint certain angels to sit on certain thrones. You're going to have certain responsibilities out here. And then on day 2, that is when God places His government. Now, I would maintain, if you want to see it differently, that's your prerogative. I would maintain God is not putting fallen angels in charge of the government in His heaven. I do not believe that for a moment, which tells me that if this is the day that God placed the government, those angels have not yet fallen. Yep.
Did Lucifer not fall on day 2?
If that's a good question. You could look at that and say, okay, that's when Lucifer hatched his plan about I'll be like the Most High. And then he begins to traffic his iniquity among those principalities and powers. Is it possible that before this day, Satan is already thinking, I'll be like the Most High? He could have been. He could have been, before that ever got done. He could have already gotten lifted up with pride and thought, I can do this job better than God can do this job. But he hasn't done anything with it.
Was he one of them already put on one of those positions?
See, no, I think he's in a different position because he was the anointed cherub that covered, and I see that as a position in the third heaven over the throne of God. So, when he sees this gets populated, I think he sees a way to get control of the heavens. If he does, day 2, let's suppose God puts the government out there on day 2. Pick a day when He convinces those principalities to join Him. It doesn't matter. It won't matter. You say, well, I think before day 2 was out, he had his rebellion. Doesn't matter. I think before day 3 was out, he had his rebellion. Doesn't matter. If you say, I think God created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and after He did that, then Satan decided to do his rebellion. It doesn't matter. Why? Because it doesn't matter. The physical part of the creature doesn't show up until day 4. Here's what you know. Before day 6, it's done. Because who shows up on day 6? Adam. Adam shows up on day 6. So let's put the earth right here. Here's Adam. He's on the 6th day. God rests on the 7th day. And on the first day of the week, when God comes into the garden, guess what's already happened? Adam has already lost everything. You know what it took? One day. I'm looking at a pattern. You created on the 4th day. The rebellion happens on the 5th day. God creates man on the 6th day. He falls on the 7th day. And on the first day of the week, Satan is the prince of the power of the air and the prince of this world. Got them both done right there in the beginning. So it doesn't matter. You could say, well, I think really he fell. I think the angels joined him before the 4th day when he created, and he just did it on the 3rd day. It won't matter, because the answer to Bud's question is, if the creature got created on day 4, and even if it waited till day 5 to fall, the creature never had a day to function properly. You could essentially say the creature has never, ever accomplished what he was made to accomplish. Not for a single day.
The last lesson you said that the heavenly places, or the creature, the sun, moon, the stars,
And the host of heaven.
hosts and everything, is the body.
It
And that's
functions as the...
The spirit is the earth.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I was,
Consists of the creature.
right. That when Paul talks about the creature, he's not talking about earth or any of the things that are happening on the earth. He's just talking about this part. Yes.
Is that why they call it the body of Christ?
Yes. Exactly right. It's the body. And when you see that, do you see the real issue here is, for the first time, you're going to enable the creature to do what he was designed to do from the day he was created. And why? I know we're into our time here, but I just don't want you to lose track of how we got here. Why did God, by the way, I'll save it for after we come back. Don't confuse being made subject to vanity with the rebellion. Those are not the same thing. Because God did one, Satan did the other. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to give you a one-sentence definition that will tie all of this up, and you'll go, oh, it'll straighten all that in your thinking out. And you'll go, oh, well, that was easy. Easy for you. Not so much for me.